Welcome back. We're still monitoring the FCT council elections here today. And of course, we have our correspondents across the councils in Abuja, and we've been bringing to you details from each of these councils as they come in live. We're not stopping here because we're still going to be doing that. Now, Nigeria's electoral system has entered a new legal phase following the signing of amendments to the Electoral Act by Bola Tinubu. Now, the attachments are expected to address key challenges observed in previous elections, strengthen transparency, and also to clarify legal and procedural uncertainties that have often led to disputes. But electoral reform is not only about legislation, it's also about confidence.
Because ultimately, the success of any electoral law depends on what is written, or not on what is written actually, Mazino, but on how it is implemented.
Exactly.
And whether citizens believe in the process it governs. To help us examine what this means for Nigeria's democratic future, we are joined by Mazino.
Curiously, as the president of the Senate, even Rosa Zokoraja asked a question, going by the electoral law, going by the Electoral Act, you ought not to be in the Senate in the first place, because it is stated you are prohibited from contesting for two separate offices in the same election. So how did you emerge? That question was brushed aside. Now, you see, I tell people, Nigerians, we have been seared in the flame of corruption, sweltering under the heat of oppression. And we thought that the amendment of Section 60, excluding that clause, that provision that included manual voting, that definitely a joyous break would have arrived. It was going to hew us out of that mountain of oppression and with a stone of hope, take us to the land of hope. Even if we don't get it in 2027, we might get it. At least we started the process of getting it right. But because most of those in the National Assembly got there corruptly. I mean, Bukashawa himself said it, a former senator, said most of them would have been there, begged for his wife, who was the president of the Court of Appeal. What does that tell you? He was dragged to court and there's a perpetual injunction. The court is also part of the problem, part of this conspiracy. Because we live in a society where the rule of law is caged and the administration of justice roundly subverted. Even if you look at the past election of the president of the country, Bola Tinubu, we all know the definition of the coordinating conjunction, and simply means plus. If I say Mazino and David to come to my house, I did not say Mazino alone should come to my house. I'm expecting Mazino at my house with David. But the Supreme Court curiously gave an interpretation that negated the very essence of that clause, that coordinating conjunction. And that is why we have the president we have today, Bola Tinubu. Now they say they have 30 or 31 governors. Most of the senators, most of the House of Lords, let me just say most of the legislators are members of the APC. But they are not satisfied, they are not convinced that that will guarantee their victory. Why? Because these governors, these senators, these legislators, let me just say, have just one vote, and maybe members of their family, some of the members of their family. And they know that majority will come from the masses who have been hard hit by the economic, I call it political, overheated political engine, exceedingly inflammatory social climate, and highly combustible economic atmosphere. And Nigerians are worse hit. We feel the pain. It is pervasive and palpable. So they are scared that given this bad administration, maladministration, that Nigerians will not vote for them. And that is why they have decided to include that provision, that where the beavers or whatever, the electronic voting, wherever it has, if it cannot reach certain areas, then they should resort to manual voting. But NCC had said, and in the last election, NCC had at least 97% success. INEC too said it can still go ahead with electronic voting. But And even when they did the town hall meetings and so on, Nigerians clamored for electronic voting. But the legislators who are scared and who know that definitely they will not be allowed to return to that the electronic voting and electronic voting alone, decided to add that provision. And that is where we have the problem.
Mr. Opunabo, let me come in there. Let me come in there, Mr. Opunabo.
Let me just finish. Just 1 minute.
Okay.
I'll tell you that there will be glitches on that day in so many areas. And the court will say yes, that the INEC said there were glitches, just as it happened with the National Assembly and the presidential election in 2015. Where curiously we had everybody voted for the National Assembly members, candidates. But when it got to the presidency, we had glitches. Meanwhile, they voted simultaneously. Yes.
Mr. Opunabo, I wanted to talk about something that you just mentioned there, not going too far from that mention and what we've just experienced with our correspondent Sumaya I think that's Kuje, if I'm not mistaken, I can't remember. Now, she was approached by a member of the public who said that they couldn't vote because of the electronic challenges that they were facing with their cards, not having their NIN recognized there. Now, these are instances that points to the fact that sometimes you would have these issues when it comes to electronic transmission, and that maybe you needed that proviso where it says and or transfer versus transmission. We've just seen that play out. Now, that brings the argument that has happened all through the past 2 weeks with the protests
I know
and
you are
all.
going to use.
Yeah, and that was.
Let me be honest with you.
Go ahead.
I knew you were going to use that to bolster that provision. I knew, and I can tell you, if you observe, the correspondent interviewed few persons, and one person indicated objects to be interviewed. That don't be too surprised. Get your investigation. That must be somebody that must have been called upon to so do just to justify that provision.
No. Sorry, sir. Okay, I get where you're coming from, but hypothetically speaking, whether we don't necessarily know the reason to him wanting to be interviewed.
I'm not done. I'm not done, my sister.
Go ahead.
Done. I said yes. Just as you said, hypothetically.
Okay.
You know, because yes, we don't have the facts so far. And if you remember, I said, let us also do our investigation. Nevertheless, situations like that happen. Like they said, it's like the SMS message. Mike again himself explained these things. It's like the SMS message. There might not be network now, but whenever you go to where the network drop, where there is network, the message will drop. That is number one. Number two, in fairer societies, you might not have problems with this. But don't forget, in the last election, they had 100%. They had 100%. INEC, electronic voting, they had 100% in the last election. And that's why I said they were prepared. When I told you that the last governorship election, this one that was just conducted recently. And that's why INEC said they are ready, they are capable. You don't speak for the people. The people said, this is what we want. You're there representing the people. You're supposed to be there in the image of the people. People said, this is what we want. NCC is saying we are capable. INEC is saying we are ready. So on what premise are you putting this provision? Because INEC has said we are ready. Now you're going to use this as an example to say, if INEC says we are ready, what of the FCT election? Maybe at that point in time, as we are speaking, he's finding it impossible to vote. But if you're not surprised that maybe give him another 1, 2, 3 hours, there might be it might be possible for him to vote electronically. That's the point. We are not saying we are not going to have itches. After Goodluck Jonathan, when he was voting in 2015, could not the voters could not capture him or whatever. What something happened. It took him around 2, 3 hours, and eventually he voted. And that is the point we are making.
Mr. Opunabo,
yes.
Election rules are meant to help make elections credible. The presidency has signed this bill into law because of the gaps that were noticed in previous elections. And I'm wondering, are you saying that there's nothing inside of this new law, this new act, that actually helps with transparency and trust of the processes that lead to bringing leadership to the people?
Well, probably, definitely. We have some new ones, but the truth about it is that it's like, for example, giving a man a car without an engine. The car has doors, it has the steering wheel, it has tires, it has headlamps, it has everything. But without the engine, how can you drive that car? So the crux of this, when you talk of credibility, fairness, and transparency, we are talking of electronic voting. Where results, look at the last election. Most of the results that were admitted were mutilated by the Supreme Court. And that's why I say the Supreme Court is a co-conspirator. Why am I saying that? The Supreme Court is not just a court of justice, it's a court of policy. The Supreme Court could have said no. In the interest of democracy, because I call this democratic apparition, we are not practicing democracy. In the interest of democracy, this is our judgment. That's what we expected. Again, he mentioned the situation where even INEC came and testified against the candidates. That result is not from INEC. Supreme Court still went ahead to declare the candidate the winner. And that's why we say the masses no longer vote for their leaders. Rather, the Supreme Court imposes rulers. I'm choosing my word carefully. The masses no longer vote for leaders. The Supreme Court imposes rulers on Nigerians. I'm talking of Mike Nkidi, resident electoral commission, who said they went to court to testify against a candidate with mutilated results and said, this is not from us. But that man is still in the National Assembly to speak right now. That is the problem. That is what we're talking about.
Mr. Inko Tariah.
Yes.
Go ahead. Finish up. Go ahead.
According to him, there are corrupt, fraudulent INEC officials who disclose to candidates and even give them copies of the informed ECHA. So they go, mass produce, prepare the results, and come back. I'm using that. These are the words of Mike Nkidi, a resident electoral commissioner. So the hope is fallen. He said he has lost faith in Nigeria and has lost faith in the judiciary, which is supposed to be his constituency, the legal profession. So that is what Nigerians are saying. In order to avoid all these problems, let us have electronic voting. Where as you vote if you read simultaneously,
the argument is very loud.
Mr. Inko Tariah.
If there's not at any particular time,
it's a loud
it will drop once you have network.
Hundreds.
Yes.
Now, if we're looking ahead towards the 2027, what risks or challenges could undermine the effectiveness of these reforms if they are not properly managed?
They will never be properly managed because these things are orchestrated. Let us not delude ourselves. I mean, it will be batting on a sticky wicket to think that come 2027, we are going to have a credible, transparent, free, fair election. It will never happen because of that provision. And that is why everybody is clamoring. That's why even after it has been passed and signed into law, Nigerians are not happy.
Mr. Inko Tariah, what has to happen now then? The law has been passed. We have an election that's going on currently that would stand as a sample for 2027. We're talking about Abuja, we're talking about AMAC. That's a big deal election. So what has to happen if you have no faith in this new law?
You see, when a man is pushed to the wall, he bounces back with redoubled effort. When conscienceless power means powerless conscience, the first might laugh first, but the last will laugh last. I don't want to sit down here and start predicting omen. No, bad things. But I can tell you that the 2027 election might be the starting point of something we don't desire, we don't want, we don't desire. Because definitely the result will not reflect the votes of Nigerians. I can tell you this for free. I can tell you this for free.
Well, Mr. Inko Tariah, I want to say thank you very much. It's always a pleasure, like we said at the start of this segment, to always have you and give us your expert opinion about the issues that we are going through this time, about the new electoral law. But we look and see, let's see if this would be a sample for what we should expect come next processes when it comes to the elections in Nigeria.
I can assure you, my dear Mazino, I can assure you that at the end of this exercise, you'll be shocked at the disclosures. You'll be shocked at the disclosures. I can assure you.
Okay. Well, Mr. Inko Tariah, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you. And thank you, my dear sister. Good morning.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.